Hello, everyone. Welcome to another gallery exhibit reception, which is online. And today we are featuring Kirsten Brichler. Kirsten is of Marshall, Minnesota. Welcome to the SMAC Gallery Show. I'm Nicole DeBoer. I am the exec director for the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council. If you are watching this online at a later date, we hope you enjoy this virtual tour of a felted wool exhibit that we have in the gallery. And the date today is April, goodness, it's already April 10th. Spring is blooming in 2025. And the show is up until the end of April. I don't have that date right in front of me, but the last Friday in April, the show is up through
25th.
So 25th, up through the 25th. So if you're looking at this soon, you have time to come in and check out these exquisite pieces in person. So thank you all for joining us. We are going to share a little bit about Kirsten and then toss it over to one of my staff mates, Crystal Lawaji, who has created a video that will showcase each piece in the gallery. And so you'll get to actually see all of the pieces that are in the gallery and enjoy them just as if you were there in person. And then after that, we will open it up for any questions or good comments that you might have for Kirsten or for SMAC staff too. All right, so I'm going to share with you just a little bio about Kirsten. She received a SMAC Quick Support for Artists grant in 2023 for a project she titled Wildlife in Wool, which is actually this exhibit, that focuses on showing the diversity of life in Minnesota through 3D felted sculptures and needle felted 2D paintings. So in Kirsten's words, this is her bio. My name is Kirsten Brichler. I hold 2 degrees in entomology. Currently, I serve as an agronomy professor and a greenhouse manager. With a lifelong passion for both nature and the arts, I have sought to merge these interests through my creative work. This project aims to highlight the diverse wildlife of Minnesota, both familiar and lesser known, using the medium of needle felting with wool. By combining my scientific background with my artistic expression, I strive to capture the intricate beauty of the natural world in a tangible, textured form. So welcome, Kirsten. Did I miss anything on the bio?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That
Great.
about covers most of it.
Awesome. We are just so pleased to have you in the gallery. So pleased that you're willing to do this virtual tour and answer questions. If okay, I'm going to hand off to my compadre, Crystal, and she is going to share a video of what is sitting in the SMAC Gallery right now. Thanks. that was an awesome show. We had a great time at the reception. Some of the images of audience that you see in this video that you just watched, those are from the reception. And so, yeah, it was a great night. Great night. And you are
It's a lot
able
of fun.
to stop and take a look at the show until April 25th, Friday, April 25th. Our gallery is open from 9 to noon and from 1 to 4 every day, Monday through Friday. And so, yeah, you've got time to take a look. Thanks, Kirsten. You want to, anything you want to comment on before we open it up for questions?
Um, I guess I can just mention maybe briefly how needle felting happens,
Yeah,
since
that'd be great.
I don't think a ton of people know how it works. So needle felting, which is what everything here was, there were some 3D pieces and some 2D pieces. And what I used to make all of it was, for the bulk of it, wool, which started out, I actually have some here, would start out just as a fluffy pieces of wool, kind of like this. And then I would take a needle, which is made for needle felting. They're these little needles that have barbs on them. And you stab the wool until it kind of felts down and gets thicker and firmer, kind of knots into itself, and that takes it into the shapes that you want it to be, or in the case of the 2D ones, that holds the felt to whatever fabric you are using. And you kind of just keep doing that until it turns into whatever shapes you want it to be. Which is a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun playing with different colors and types of wool. The 3D ones you could see, I kind of started playing later on with adding in non-wool things like driftwood. The little light up mushrooms were a lot of fun to make. Those were with fairy lights and a glue gun, which was fun. And being able to mix the wool with that, because I think the wool gives a very nice kind of tactile feel and texture to it versus some things like, say, painting and drawing and stuff like that. I will say the felting takes so much longer than any sort of painting or drawing I've ever done, though, because you have to carefully take each little piece of whatever color you're doing, potentially roll it up into like a little ball or get it approximately the size you want whatever you're doing to be, whether that's a spot or a stripe or completely covering something, and then you have to carefully stab that into place and then potentially go down to a different needle to stab it even more to make it smoother, which was a much more time-consuming process for these detailed pieces than I really expected before this project. Very therapeutic, though.
And they are so detailed. So for some sizing, you saw some humans in pictures alongside of the 3D sculptures, but the frames for the 2D pieces, are like 3 and 4 and 5 inches for a round size. So she is really working with like 2 hairs at a time to do some of the fine detailing that is on these pieces. So you might think that the 2D is easy. No, that is not. It's not easy. And the 3D is a whole nother level that I really can't even comprehend. So
The 3D
my
took much, much, much longer than I planned on, which why there's not quite as many of those as I had initially planned on when I started doing this, but because the 3D, you're literally starting with just a wad of wool. You have to stab it so much to get into the vague shape of what you want, then add more and stab it into the exact shape you want. And usually I would be using a much cheaper wool for that because the stuff that is nicely colored is kind of expensive. So you don't get a whole lot of that. And then you have to go over with the colored wool and then coat it in that, get it nice and smooth, add any sort of spots, stripes, eyes, all of that and to get things more. The projects I had done before this were much simpler, and I wasn't going for detail and accuracy so much with those as I did with this one. And so some of these projects, I'd be working on them several hours a week when I was doing most of the 3D ones, and it took me several months on each of them. I'm happy with how they turned out, but much longer process than I expected. The 2D ones did go a little bit faster since you could skip the whole step of making the entire shape of everything.
As a mom with kids, I'm sure that it took a little longer than you anticipated to work around
It also turns
schedules.
out sharp barbed needles do not make for a great activity to do around a toddler. Or having a bunch of wool scattered everywhere.
I
That was
want to
a
just
little bit as
open
well.
it up for questions, but I want to start with a note of appreciation about your scientific descriptions for all of the creatures and plants that you created. Those are amazing. So it's one thing to appreciate the art, but also because of your scientific background, to have that knowledge share was just, it was really awesome. It's not something we see very often in our gallery. So thank you for that attention to detail and sharing that info with us. So
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to questions. Fire away at Kirsten. You don't have to necessarily raise your hand. I think we all know how Zoom works. When we see somebody come off mute, just give a little pause and let them ask their question.
I feel like I've got a lot of questions, so I can start a little bit. I am curious, so all of the pieces that you felted, you didn't put any like styrofoam shapes under them to start with or anything?
The closest I did to that was on the bobcat and the toad. There is some wire armature in there to help make sure that the legs hold their shape, and for the bobcat to help make sure that that can actually like support itself and stand up.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most that I have inside of them that is like not wool. And I will say that was a learning curve too on figuring out how to get wool to stay around a metal wire.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really felt right onto that, and you have to be careful when you are stabbing around that not to, stab the wire itself, because that's a great way to snap a needle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I actually managed not to snap any of them on there, but there were a few close calls where I got a little bit nervous, or I stabbed myself in the finger a few times with it. That's a really good part to use, the little like leather finger protectors that they make.
Is it like, are you against using styrofoam inside some of the pieces, or it's just something that you decided not to do?
It's just something I kind of decided not to do. I didn't have any on hand, and that would likely require some carving and stuff for the things that I was making. I think it actually hadn't really even crossed my mind. Since they weren't, if I was doing something that was much larger than probably the bobcat or the toad, I would probably look more into doing something like that, because I've seen online people doing really large things, and I cannot imagine having to do layer by layer of wool doing that. And I think that would also get quite expensive, because wool is not the cheapest material in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've also heard of people using polyfill, which maybe doesn't feel quite as nicely, but they would use that for like the core part.
Mm-hmm.
I think styrofoam would maybe be doable, help with weight, and save a lot of time and money for a larger piece.
And I know they do make them in some shapes. I mean, I took a very introductory course about that, and like I used a little round styrofoam to
Yeah.
make like a cat triangle head, basically, you know.
Okay.
So it did help like create a little bit
How
of
well did it
mix.
felt onto that? Because I haven't had experience with that.
I thought it worked pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you have much more accurate shapes with yours instead of me trying to make a triangle cat head out of a little ball, but you know.
I will say, I almost wish I would have gone a little larger on the bobcat or something. Trying to get that bobcat's head in the right shape was incredibly difficult at that size.
I feel like the Bobcat was one of the first ones I saw. Was that one of the first ones you were working on for the project?
That was the second. No, that was the fourth 3D one that I did,
Oh, okay.
which I did it a little earlier on. That was in the first year. Because I was able to do the mushroom and the pygmy bee fly relatively quickly. And then after those, I did the perch. And then the bobcat was the first, like, larger, really detailed one. And the different shapes, doing the limbs and stuff on that one really made it take a lot more time in the spots and stuff. So even the perch was a bit faster than that. And then the toad just took forever because that was even more shapes and a lot more spots and things if you look at that one. Very happy with how the toad came out, though. I think that one's up there for my favorites.
Well, I could have more questions, but I'm going to see if other people do. So.
Okay.
Well, Kirsten, I'm going to tell you, I don't really have any questions for you because I have quizzed you extensively already. And I have watched you just sit and stab a bunch of wool and then turn into one of these beautiful things. And so I just want to tell you how amazed I am at what you do and just how beautiful these pieces are. I didn't think I would love the 2D pieces as much as I love the 3D, but the amount of detail in there, it's literally just incredible, and they're gorgeous. So good job. And I truly appreciate them. I have one of your pieces and I can't wait to buy some more. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is a good reminder that was on the very end of the video that you saw, that all of the pieces are for sale. And SMAC really believes in supporting our artists. We don't take any commission on any sales. So all the sales go directly to Kirsten. And if you're interested, you can contact the SMAC office. If you saw one on there that didn't already say sold, because she has sold a number of them, and we can get you in touch with Kirsten. Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
got one for myself. I got one for myself too. So yeah.
Yes.
And whatever doesn't sell will live in my house for a while.
Guess I have a question if I can.
What was that?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fabulous. My question was, I mean, I love the shapes that so much of your work like assume, like in their final form. Is there any sort of like upkeep or maintenance you have to perform on like this type of craft once it's completed to make sure it doesn't distort or change due to, atmosphere, environment, anything like that? Or is like once you've settled it, is it pretty much good to go?
If you're using it as art and not a cat toy or a child's toy, it should keep its form pretty well. My only thing that I would warn about would be to potentially keep an eye out for wool pests. So things like dermestid beetles or clothes moths. If you happen to know you have those around your house, you might want to find a way to treat these, or maybe frame them in a way where you could sneak a mothball or something in there, which I know is not super great, but it is made out of wool, which is what some insects eat. I know when I was storing these at home, if it's not something I have on display, I have them stored in a tote that has like a mothball or cake or something in it just to try and protect them. Generally, the felting, though, like those wool fibers are pretty well felted together. If you've ever accidentally put a wool sweater into a, washer and dryer that was not meant for that, and you know that you cannot undo that on sweaters, you can't really undo it on these either. I have made like little toy cat balls and things like that. And if you have, something like a cat chewing on them and pulling at the fibers and stuff, it will start to fluff out a little bit more and can be stabbed back down. The art pieces, I think, seem to hold together. From what I've seen, they don't seem to change a whole lot over time. Moths
I
and
love-
beetles aside.
I love that humor, but it's real. Like if I had the little junco, you have a little bird, a junco bird. If I had that one, I would have to put it in under a cloche. My cat would have that within about 30 seconds. You just
If you
beeline
have
for
cats, I
that.
will warn. Yeah, something about that wool and those shapes, and it's a really nice texture for them to hold.
Mhm.
Our cats really liked the little balls that I made for them. So, yeah, the 3D ones, keep out of reach of cats and potentially kids. It won't hurt them. They might hurt it a little bit though. More durable than a lot of art though. It can take a little bit of a beating and handling.
So I know that you've explained that you made the little mushrooms from glue gun, but I'm still not understanding, like, how did you not just burn your fingers? Like, how did you shape the glue?
What? I'm sorry, my internet's cutting out just a tiny bit. What was the last
Okay.
bit? How I shaped what?
Like, how did you shape the glue without like burning your fingers and things like that?
So for the like stems and stuff of that, so it's little fairy lights, which it was like a cheap $2 light or something. They're basically a wire and they have like the little dots of like LED lights on them. And you can actually take those wires and kind of twist them up so that the light is on the top and it makes like a little stem. Then I kind of have that sit there and just dribble some of the glue down onto that to make the stem. I actually have it in, I do have it in my desk here. And to make the caps, I stole my son's little pop socket thing because they're silicone. And then I just dribbled some glue in there. I think I had them popped up when I did it. I can't remember. That was like a year ago. Let it cool, and then I could like kind of peel that off and then just glue it on top of the stem. Might have slightly burnt my fingers a couple times in handling the glue, but
Yeah.
I wasn't directly handling it too much. But those were actually kind of fun to do. And if you ever want like little mushroom lights to use around your house, like it's kind of a fun, simpler project than I expected.
It
And they're
looks
super
great.
cute.
Yeah. Well, I'm also going to ask if you can share your current piece you're working on, since I know that you have it sort of close by.
Yeah, so the last project that I was trying to get finished up for this, based on we had Betsy Pardick, hoping I'm getting her name right. She
Mhm.
came and was wonderful and sang at the reception, and she is part of a band called the Nautical Moth. So I tried to find the closest thing in Minnesota to a nautical moth, which is the chestnut-marked pondweed moth. It is a moth whose larvae live in pondweed in ponds. It's sort of nautical. It's coming along. I had very little of this done during the reception because I was having too much fun talking to people. And I've managed to get some more done. I still need to do a few more spots on it, kind of like down here, and then I'm going to give it a fringe on its wings, which the actual moth has in its antennae, and then this one will be done. Yeah, this was a fun little cute one. And I've been trying to get it done over the last few weeks when I have time, but baby and toddler make that a little bit hard. But we're getting there.
So I think my last question is just, I know all of the pieces you did were Minnesota native, but how did you choose which ones you were going to do? Like, what was that process about what you picked, or was it just a little bit random about what you were familiar with, or?
It was a little random. I was trying to do a mix of some that people would be relatively familiar with and probably like and be happy to see. So things kind of like the loons, the moose, maybe even, the bobcat and stuff. But I also wanted to mix in some things that maybe people wouldn't realize are in Minnesota or wouldn't necessarily, recognize or notice because they're small. So like this little moth is a tiny moth whose wings are 20 millimeters from one point to the other. They're tiny. The yellow-headed blackbird, granted, I'm not from Minnesota, so I don't know how many people realize those are here. That is not a bird I knew existed until I moved here and saw a flock of them in a tree our first year here and was like, what in the world am I looking at right now? and thought was just a beautiful bird. So I kind of tried to just find a mix of things that I find beautiful and interesting, and a mix of both, maybe some of the more familiar that people like and ones that are a little less familiar to introduce people to newer, you know, different birds or insects and things. I do hope over time to continue kind of adding to this collection. It's probably just going to be when my kids are a little bit bigger, and until then be very, very slow in progress.
That is so awesome, because that was my next question is, where do you think what are you tackling next? Or what are your next top 3 pieces you're going to do for this collection?
Yeah. I do want to do more of the little birds. So like that dark-eyed junco, my original idea with that is I want to get a little tree branch and do like either multiple juncos in different sort of positions, or maybe like some juncos and some chickadees, some other little birds. I have some little clay feet that I made that were supposed to be for the junco and ended up like 3 times too large for that bird. So I might make like a little blue jay or something with those. So I want to do more of like the little round-bodied birds, because those were just cute and fun. And I think those would also be fun ones that I could, you know, maybe share or sell with people that people would enjoy. I also have in my head another like bigger one, so similar to like the toad one, but maybe with some like different fish and stuff swimming around a big piece of driftwood. And I'd love to do more 2D ones showcasing even more of like the lesser known insects and plants and things like that. I need to get more felt fabric for that though, because the weird sizes of the embroidery hoops actually ate through that fabric a lot faster than I expected. But the 2D was fun, and I'll probably stick with 2D a little bit more for a while, since that one works up just a little bit faster and easier. But I feel like I can get really pretty details and things like that mixed on there.
Do you only need one layer of felt to start, like your base for your 2D? Is it just one layer? Or do you do multiple layers of felt because you
Usually
want a real thick base?
it depends how well I eyeball how much I'm laying down the first time. Usually it's more or less just one layer. So like on this one, it's kind of 2 layers. So when there's smaller details like that, it's going to be solid white underneath that. And then I will go over top the white and add in the little details. But then with things like where there's this orange here, there's not white under the orange. I drew it out underneath and I just filled it in with the orange. So it's sort of a mix of layers. Depends on what I'm doing. I want to do some more 2D ones too that have some 3-dimensional elements that kind of like pop out that moose piece. For those of you that have seen it in person, you'll look at it and notice that the tree trunk kind of comes out a little bit, as do the crows. The yellow-headed blackbird one, which is probably my favorite of the 2-dimensional pieces. I just love how the yellows came out on that. But the cattails on that one are kind of fluffy and come off. And I kind of want to do some more things with that, just because I find that being able to bring that 3-dimensional element, especially those textures and stuff that kind of comes with the fluffier wool, is really fun with those. I've had a lot of fun playing with this and kind of seeing what the wool can do. And I know there's a lot more it can do, but I've definitely learned a lot in this.
Yeah. Well, I sincerely hope you expand this series and hope to see it exhibited in an expanded form sometime soon or somewhere in the next couple of years. Maybe you'll have a few more pieces, and I'd love to relook at it, because it's great to experience. So she's up in the gallery again till April 25th. Any other questions before we say adieu? Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kirsten.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the chance to do this. This was a really cool project. I had a lot of fun with it. I'm very grateful I had the chance to do this. And a chance to show it off.
We're grateful we got to share your art. So Thank you for all you do, and we will see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.